Nina Shea is up next, but first, church burnings and desecrations continue across Western Europe, occurring almost daily in France, Germany, Italy, and Northern Ireland. According to the Hudson Institute's Nina Shea, the attacks are most often committed by militant secularists, anarchists, Islamists, and far-left groups unleashing anti-Christian hatred. In Northern Ireland, for example, a UK charity organization documented nearly 500 attacks on church properties since 2016. Shea warns that civil unrest could ensue if authorities don't start addressing these atrocities. Joining us now to talk about all of this is Nina Shea of the Hudson Institute. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Now, why is this happening? What is driving this? I was in France recently, and there were a number of churches you just didn't go near because they've become kind of surrounded by people who don't want these churches here or the symbol of the church.
Yeah, well, it's an anti-Christian sentiment, certainly, that's driving a lot of this. Some of this is vandalism, neglect by the government to protect the churches. In fact, that's all of it. But there's also some real animus. These are people who defecate in the baptismal font, and it's happening in country after country. And, beheading statues of Mary and Jesus. It's quite deliberate. There's graffiti written on the wall that condemns the church's teachings about abortion, for example. Blessed abortion was one of the graffiti slogans. Anarchists, the only church that illuminates is a burning church, is the name of their website.
Wow.
So there is an anti-faith animus.
Tell me, and I read this report, 400 attacks in Northern Ireland in the last 3 years, over 1,000 in Europe in 2018 alone. There's got to be something. Is it? Some are saying it's the intrusion of different cultures, people, Islamists who don't like a Christian or Catholic presence in this new land.
That is definitely part of it. And some of the arrests that have taken place in France, for example, which Ellen Fatimi of the Observatory on Christian Discrimination in Europe, she tracks this stuff, says that France is the worst. Over the last 4 years, there have been hundreds of these cases. And the people who tend to be arrested are Islamists, who are serial arsonists in some cases. Or who come in and actually put the Koran on the altar and then take an axe to the statues. It's really astonishing how bold this is. Yeah. But they're not the only ones. We're seeing the far left as well, and the secularists and the pro-abortion types coming in and vandalizing some of these churches as well. And the government doesn't protect them.
I want to read you something. This is from the head of the Bishops' Conference in France, Archbishop Georges Pontier. And he told Le Point magazine, "We adopt a reasonable attitude. We do not want to develop a discourse of persecution. We do not wish to complain. We are not victims of Catholophobia. In its history, Judaism has fought an ongoing struggle against anti-Semitic groups. We Catholics in France now do not have to face such violence every day." Your reaction to that idea?
Yeah, my reaction is the great quote from George Weigel from several years ago, saying that some of the bishops in Europe have internalized the sense of their own marginalization and irrelevance and that of the churches. And it's that kind of lack of confidence, righteous outrage. You know, when Jesus Christ saw the money changers in the church, he didn't hesitate to react. This is as much as a desecration as that was, and this is the house of worship. This is the house of God. We should be demanding their protection.
One does wonder about the depth of belief when, this isn't a bank or a school, which, frankly, I would be outraged if these people came in and defiled, defecated, graffitied a school or a bank or any public place.
Right.
But now you're talking about a place that you claim to believe Jesus Christ himself resides in.
Right.
If you really believed that, you'd be up in arms and you'd have security around the place, making sure this doesn't happen
Security, surveillance cameras, you'd be demanding that there be arrests.
I mean, that Saint-Sulpice in Paris, it's a tragedy. You walk in on the right side of that church, you see all the burn marks, the faces of the bas-relief on the wall, all gone. Yeah. It's terrible what happened there, and yet it goes on. I want to move to Mozambique. The Pope is there now. There is a very outspoken bishop, Dom Luis Fernandez, who's been very outspoken of Pemba. And he has been calling out the Islamist attacks, particularly in the north.
That's right.
Your sense of what's happening here, why isn't the government doing more? And I know the bishops' conference there recently responded to the Pope during his visit.
Yes, there have been hundreds of house burnings, murders, villages wiped out, beheadings. Not all of these are directed at Christians, some of them against the moderate Muslims.
Right.
But a church has been burned there, and it's moving south. This is a very big problem. We've seen it in other countries like Burkina Faso, in northern Nigeria, in West Africa. So now it's coming here too. And this bishop, who's the head of the bishops' conference in Mozambique, has spoken out very clearly.
Right.
First, to the government, demanding protection. And he said he compared it to a cyclone. And of course, the Pope has referenced the cyclone in his talk about Mozambique.
He was referencing climate change.
He was referencing climate change, and there had been 2 cyclones in Mozambique recently. And this bishop says, well, this is as bad as any cyclone, and this is something the government can do about it. What I have seen, Raymond, is that we train troops. There is, counterterrorism knowledge and equipment and so forth in these countries, and it's used to protect the government. Or I was talking to a Catholic bishop from the Congo. He said it's used to protect the Chinese gold mines in the Congo. It's not used to protect the villages and the people and to stop terror attacks and this, this vast wave of cyclone of murder.
Do you think we'll hear the Pope speak out on this?
I certainly hope so. Raymond, they've said that the point of it is that the Pope has paid attention to Islam and Islamic countries more than any other pope, and has made all these different visits around Africa and the Middle East. He needs to address what's happening, the big threat that this country is facing.
I want to move to Hong Kong. I know I'm taking you on a global tour here. We've been to Europe. We're now going to Hong Kong. The executive there in Hong Kong, Carrie Lam, she rescinded that extradition law that has become the focal point of these protests we've been seeing for weeks in Hong Kong. Now, this law would have allowed anyone charged with a crime in Hong Kong to be moved to the mainland and tried there.
Right.
The folks of Hong Kong did not cotton to this, did not take well to it, and they have risen up.
All sectors have come out, pretty much all sectors have come out and protested for 3 months. The church has been vocal about it, calling for a day of fast and prayer this week. The church would certainly be among the first to suffer from any extradition agreement.
Why is that?
Because of the intense persecution in China now. And it affects all churches, and meaning Protestant and Catholic. The deal with
even Muslims who are rounded up and thrown into concentration camps.
Yes, Muslims, Tibetan Buddhists, Falun Gong, across the board, really. But in Hong Kong, you have these Christian churches. I don't know if you have any significant Muslim or Tibetan population there, but it's really, and the 2 people who are most prominent in this movement are Christians, Joshua Wong and Agnes Chow. Agnes is a Catholic, so and Joshua is an evangelical. So these 2 have been arrested. They were released over the weekend. Very courageous. They know they're young. They're in their 20s. But there are many others in many other sectors, labor and so forth.
Now, they claim, the protesters, that this is just to placate them and quell these protests. They want inquiries into the way the police handled those protests. Do you foresee anything like that happening? And is this just a temporary stopgap from the Chinese?
Yeah, they have 5 demands. That's one of them. And releasing their colleagues. They want them out of prison. They want democracy. I don't know how much more they're going to get. But they have, it was so massive. The protests were so firm.
Million people in the streets.
And committed, millions of people over 3 months. Different sectors of society. It was really an amazing pushback.
It's remarkable.
And I think they have won at least a battle, at least a skirmish in the larger war.
Were you amazed at the number of very well-known Chinese actors and writers who came out and opposed the Hong Kong protesters. Jackie Chan, the lead actress in this new Mulan movie that Disney's putting out, they came out and supported the Chinese regime.
It's about money, and they want to sell their movies and their films. There's a massive audience, over 1 billion people in China. So that's what's driving them, I'm sorry to say.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a total sellout of principle for them.
Shea, I thank you as always for being here. We'll be in
Thank you.
touch in the coming days. Shea, of course, is at the Center for Religious Freedom at the Hudson Institute. You can follow her work at hudson.org.